Hi, my name is Renato Quintero, also known as REIQ. Welcome to this new video tutorial, and this time I'll be talking about proportions, human proportions. I'll be talking about the main landmarks and main reference points to keep in mind and track when you draw from life using a model, or even if you are creating from your own imagination, especially last one is a very important one, because if you don't have a model and you want to have proportions and keep your drawing consistent, then this is a tool that you should have and that you have to keep in mind when drawing, especially if you're going to start a drawing. And when I say when start a drawing is because we usually start drawing the head. Sometimes I start with the torso, but most people start with the head, which is a circle. And that's how many people start drawing. Just do the circle, and from then you can start drawing the body. But in this case, the head, since it's the first thing we draw, we can take that as a measurement and duplicate it. In this case, it will be 8 times, because that's the expected beauty height of a human. And humans in reality we have between 7 and 8 heads. So 8 heads is more like a superhero type, like slender, nice body. So we're gonna base the proportions using 8 heads. So by measuring and keeping track of these landmarks that I'm gonna talk about, you'll be able to improve quickly, and you'll be able to correct your own drawings, and you will be able to create the figure in a more, well, as I said, consistent way. And when I did these illustrations, I noticed that I have a few mistakes. I would say mistakes, yeah. So when I did this tutorial, I found that some of my proportions were not right, and I went ahead and I fixed them. And you will see later on how I changed from this drawing to a newer version where I actually fix it, and I managed to get to have a better drawing at the end, or a better example for you guys. However, I'll be using another reference for the proportions, but this is the main one. I wanted to start with a drawing. As you can see, this is the old version, and then I went for the new versions. I found that my character was shorter and it needed to be longer, and the navel was placed too lower, so I changed those things. As you can see, I can correct myself, and you can correct yourself using these proportions and ways of measuring the figure. There are other ways of measuring the figure, but and you can do your research by reading more about it in the internet and using Andrew Loomis. And in this case, I'm going to start with the head, and this is the head proportions that I'm going to use for this drawing. So let's start and break down these proportions, okay? So the first one, obviously, is the head. This will be our first unit. The second unit is another head that will be on the nipple lines, okay? This is a good way to, you can measure quickly 1, 2, and the third head, it will go just on the navel here, navel. So as you can see now, just by having 3 heads, we already have 2 certain points that we have to keep in mind: chin, nipple area, and the navel. For me, the most important is to keep track of these proportions first, and especially locating the navel and the torso area. For me, that's the most important, because that's where I see people have a lot of problems, and I had a lot of problems. So that's why I'm mentioning and putting emphasis on that. The other one, the other head, will be in the crotch area. So with these 4 heads, we have the middle body. The crotch area is a tricky area, because obviously there are genitals, there are penises, and there's more mass there. So it's hard to really have a point where you say, well, this is the exact area. But this is an estimate that you can put with the heads. That's how it works, because if you have that 4 heads, then you know that that's half your body. And what is a good thing about having this like these 4 heads already is that since we're gonna do 8 heads, we already have 4 heads. So you can take basically all these 4 heads, all these proportions, and duplicate it. So once you duplicate that 4 heads, you will have the overall size of your figure. And that's a good way to do it. So these are the main ones, and I'm not gonna repeat it again, because that's one of the things that you go over these proportions and then you forget about it, or where was that point? So you can say it like, where the most important one for me, apart from having the main measure of the head, is the navel. For me, that's a good area to divide the body, the upper body. Okay, then use the 4 heads to find the overall top section of your figure. So continue with the proportions of the lower body. This is where the measurement gets a little bit tricky, but if you keep the overall 8 heads, it will work. So notice that at the bottom of the pelvis, that's where the wrist will be placed of the hands. The wrist just go there, at the bottom of the pelvis. And if we keep going with the proportions, the next landmark will be around the middle of the thigh kind of thing, a little bit lower. The next one, it will be on the bottom of the knees, and I think that's one is a good measurement, because it has it's a landmark that you can see and then you can measure properly. Whereas the middle of the thigh is a little bit vague, but if you keep the proportion of the head, well, you will find it. Obviously, you just like keep the proportion of the same head. The next proportion bit, it will be very close to the ankles. It's more like in the lower middle of the leg. And the last one, of course, will be the bottom of the feet. What I said, and what is difficult about these lower proportions is that when you see the figure, there's a perspective. There's no way that you can flat the whole proportions and then see it like that when you're drawing from models or reference. There's always going to be perspective, whether you want it or not. So that's why the main big measurements from the head to the middle to the bottom of the pelvis, that's the middle, and then you duplicate that distance, and then you have a certain guidance for this. It doesn't have to be exact. It doesn't have to be like so detailed that it has to be in that place, because if not, it's wrong. It's just to keep the proportions right, and then being able to correct yourself. That's the main important issue here, is to correct yourself. Okay, so these are the main proportions. Let's see, one head. Oops. Another head, another head, another head, another head, another head, another head, another head. So 8 heads. That's the main proportion here. Let's move this to this side. Okay. So when drawing, make sure to find this proportion that I have just said. Now I'm going to compare. Instead of using my drawing, I'm going to use this photo of this anatomical and precise figure here. Because my drawing obviously is a drawing, so there's it's more exaggerated. But here you can actually see where it lands, all the proportions. And well, maybe I should have done it with this from the very beginning. but then you can see like how what I say is kept in there. And in here we can talk a little bit more, like you can see the head, nipple area, or well, actually the nipples are a little bit lower here because as I'm saying, is a proportion and perspective of the photo. This is just a photo and the angle might be different, but the main ones are here, and those will be from the top of the head to the crotch. That will be 4 heads. And the important one that I feel that I have said a few times already is the navel area. That's how you can keep the proportions of the torso kind of like consistent. And even if you do go here and then you just only like duplicate twice one head and another head, then you will have the bottom of the knees of the character, so that will be easy to place there. So the main ones, as I was saying, it will be get your head measurements, then count 1 head, 2 heads, and then place the navel. Place another head and have the crotch or bottom of the pelvis. Then duplicate that twice, and then you have the bottom of the knees, and then duplicate that twice, and then you will have the bottom of the feet. Okay, that will be here. So that will be the main ones that I'm gonna keep check. Okay, and there are more proportions, there are more things to keep in mind, but that's all that you have to study those things and observe the figure. Because now that we can measure the legs, but what about the arms? That's when things get a little bit, tricky. But keeping the measurement here that I explained of the wrist, it's in the lower bottom of the pelvis, bottom of the pelvis. That's another proportion that works pretty well. Because when you have a standing character, especially nowadays, if you're like designing a character and you put that mark there, and then like, well, the bottom of the pelvis is the bottom of is where my wrist will be located in this pose, then you will have a better proportions. So, and as I was explaining, yeah, like we have we have the wrist location, and another thing that I observe is like where the navel is, that's where our arm or elbow, the elbow will be placed. So about proportions, once you have established all of these, and if you have like a graphic and a reference sheet, then you can start observing and breaking down more proportions. You will notice certain things as you go, and then you can observe and make your own measurements by observing certain things. You can say, well, you can say that this is where the arm is, but then you can make sure, like, oh well, now that I see the figure, I see that if I draw like straight line down there, this is where the shoulder girdle will be, and you can see that from this point down, and that's the space, or that will be how wide the character is in this more realistic proportion of this figure or sculpture. Okay, since now we have these proportions of 8 heads, I want to explain a little bit on what about the rib cage and pelvis proportions, since we are drawing and usually draw the rib cage and the pelvis, and we start constructing from there. And first of all, let me turn this down a little bit here. Okay, so the rib cage will start at the pit of the neck, which is here, that's where this collarbone is placed, and if we measure, the next point will be the end of the sternum, which is there. In this figure, well, it's a little bit lower. The next one will be here. This will be the end of the rib cage, and the next one will be the crest of the pelvis, and the last one, of course, is the bottom of the pelvis. So to visualize this in a better way, I did this drawing of the rib cage and the pelvis, and this is like a like a overall measurement. It's it's not like 100% accurate, because as I said before, there's perspective issues, and the angle of and the tilt of the rib cage plus the pelvis is not straight. There's other angles. If you're standing, there's going to be angles anyway, because if you put everything flat, the position wouldn't be normal. So like erected pose will have angles. So in this case, what I wanted to explain is that you can divide from the top of the neck to the bottom of the pelvis, and then find the middle section here. Find the middle section. You can find for this one and then the second one. And once you find the middle one, trace a line, eyeball the middle one, and then you have a proportion of where the rib cage starts and ends, as well as the pelvis. So these measurements are equal. Okay. I wouldn't say is the size of a head, but once you have done the main big proportions that I explained before, then you can say, well, now that I have this, I have the bottom of the pelvis, and I have the measure of the chin. Of course, you have to find the midway of that proportion to find the pit of the neck. And from there, then you can, as I said, you can find the first one, the second one, and then you find the middle one, and then you can measure these proportions. But these are rough proportions, as I've been explaining and telling many times. But it's for you to keep an idea of the general proportions inside the body. Okay. I hope this helps, and I know it can be a little bit overwhelming, but if you keep things in a proportion way, and especially having the first 8 heads, then you can break down more the figure to do your proportions. But this is good to learn, but to keep in mind when you draw. Okay. So remember just to keep this as a guide, and this guide will help you to correct your drawings, as I have corrected mine, because before I eyeball a lot of my drawings, and I have a lot of problems because of that. And once I learned some of these basic proportions, then I was able to fix and to see where my mistakes were, because I was like, oh, how can I measure the torso? Because for me, the torso was the most important thing to measure, because keep things in a proportionate way. Okay. I'll be saving these files, and you will have them available on my on my Patreon, and I will upload these pictures plus the reference of the drawing that I did. Okay. As well as I have this other guide that I've been using for this video tutorial, which is this graphic here. And this was given to me when I was studying in the Concept Design Academy, and I think this is a good way, a good good explanation of the proportions that I already did with you, and I will upload this file, and as well as the drawings I did for you too. to have a better idea. And here we have the female version as well. And interestingly enough, it seems like the man has a longer arms. As you see, the bottom of the pelvis start with the wrist, whereas the woman has a shorter arms. Okay. Also, nipple line. You will see how the girl. Let me get closer. And you see how the nipple of the girl, because there's perspective, is a little bit above for that, but it's a measurement that you can use. Okay. So these are the main points that you can find. All right. So my advice is to review these, watch it again, find your own material. I will suggest reading a little bit of Andrew Loomis to help you with certain proportions. I would say don't go crazy with the proportions, like, oh my god, I have to know the proportions, because it can be overwhelming. I suggest, like, when you draw, keep in mind the proportions, keep in mind the measurements that I explained before, and even if you have some drawings you have done so far, go back to your drawings and use those measurements, and then you will be able to fix your drawings. You will see, oh well, look at my arms are really short, or look at this, I should have done this instead of that. That's how you can go back and fix and learn. That's the best way, because I can do this video and then you watch it and you say, okay, that's good, okay, I know this and that, okay. But once you put it on practice, at least a couple of times, and you will improve super quickly. You will be able to correct other people's drawings. You will be able to see, okay, the proportion from here to here is not enough, and from here to here is not enough, which is easy. Use the head, multiply by 4, then you have the mid of the body, then duplicate it, then you have 8 heads, and then put all the landmarks where it should be, and go ahead and practice this for a while until you feel confident, and then you have that information in your head when you draw. So it doesn't become something like, oh, I have to measure every time. I have to measure this every time. Just do it at the beginning, and then you will see how your drawings will improve after that. Okay? So I hope it helps. Please check my Patreon. I'll be doing more tutorials next month. And please keep supporting. If you have any questions about these, I'm open to answer any questions you have. Send it on my Patreon or send it to my mail, and I'll be able to reply to you. But as I said before, this is just general information, and well, I'm not like the best teacher in the world, but I'm giving you these tools, and because I'm giving you this tool and these measurements because they help me, and I had a lot of problems before, and with this measurement I feel like I've improved and I have a better sense of my characters. So keep practicing. I will love the material plus other reference material so you can have to draw and practice. Okay, so thank you very much and keep rocking. Thank you for supporting my work, and I'll see you next time for sure. Thank you.